Okay, so we've got a pretty hefty stack of articles here all about the history of spiritual seeking.
Yeah.
Seems like you're fascinated by how
Mhm.
humans across different cultures and time periods have tried to kind of grapple with these
Right.
big questions about existence and purpose and all that.
You've really hit on something fundamental here. I think it's a
Yeah.
question that's kind of plagued humanity from the very beginning.
Right.
Um, and it seems like you're especially curious about how those searches for meaning,
Yeah.
how they kind of sometimes evolve into organized religions and sometimes they don't.
Yeah, and a lot of the stuff that I sent over really explores that like that tension between those two
Ah,
things, like between the very personal and the much more
absolutely.
sort of
And to
secular.
really understand that tension, I think we need to kind of go back to the beginning,
Okay.
like way back before any kind of organized religion,
So back
back
to
to prehistoric spirituality.
the dawn of humanity.
Yeah.
All right. I'm ready.
So
This is going to be good.
picture this Neanderthals in Shanidar Cave over in Iraq,
Okay.
and they're carefully arranging wildflowers around the bodies of their dead.
Wow.
Pollen analysis has shown that this was happening over 50,000 years ago.
That's incredible.
It suggests this deep reverence for life, even in death, and maybe even this belief in something beyond this world.
It's amazing to think that like our distant ancestors were already engaging in these kinds of rituals and expressing
They're grappling with these big
a
questions
hint at spirituality.
from the very beginning.
Yeah.
And it wasn't just burials. Think about the cave paintings at Lascaux in France.
Yeah, yeah.
Those vivid depictions of animals, that suggest a really profound connection to nature,
Yeah.
maybe even like an animistic worldview.
Animistic meaning.
They believed that spirits inhabited all aspects of the natural world.
Oh.
So the animals that they hunted, the rocks, the trees,
Everything.
everything had a spirit.
Wow.
It wasn't just a physical landscape. It was this living, breathing, spiritual one.
It's kind of like
It's really
sort of
interesting
wordwired for that.
to think about how these ancient animistic beliefs,
Yeah.
they're really like the root of so many spiritual and religious practices that still exist today.
That's fascinating.
It speaks volumes, I think, about how deeply connected we are
Yeah.
to the natural world,
Yeah.
both physically and maybe even spiritually.
For sure. And as human societies started to get a little more complex, did their expressions of spirituality also become more complex?
Absolutely. We see this with the emergence of shamanism.
Okay, so we're moving from individuals having their own kind of personal beliefs
Yeah.
to something a bit more organized.
Exactly.
Wow.
Shamanism is kind of like this early prototype for spiritual leadership.
Mm-hmm.
Think of shamans as this bridge between the physical and spiritual realms.
Okay.
They would use techniques like drumming, chanting,
Yeah.
even plant medicines to connect with spirits, to gain knowledge or healing for their communities.
So it's not just about personal spiritual experience anymore. It's about like the well-being of the whole community.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It was woven into the fabric of their society, helping people cope with the unknown
Yeah.
and make sense of their world.
Yeah, it's interesting to think about those shamanic journeys through the lens of like Carl Jung's
Right.
theories.
Yeah.
That maybe they were tapping into some sort of universal symbols or themes present in the human psyche.
Like this collective unconscious.
Yeah, like even though they were separated by vast distances and
yeah.
time,
Mm-hmm.
maybe they were drawing from a similar wellspring of
Yeah.
human experience.
It raises some really fascinating questions about the nature of consciousness
For sure.
and the universality of these spiritual experiences.
It's pretty mind-blowing.
Yeah.
So we've gone from these individual expressions to something a bit more
Yeah.
structured with shamanism.
Mm-hmm.
What happens next in this evolution?
Well, as civilization started flourishing, in places like Mesopotamia and Egypt,
Yeah.
we see even more complex spiritual frameworks developing,
Right.
often really interwoven with their political and social structures.
I've always been fascinated by those massive ziggurats in Mesopotamia.
Yeah.
It's like they weren't just temples, they were like these symbols of power.
Right.
And a direct link between the earthly and divine realms.
A physical manifestation of their beliefs,
Yeah.
reaching towards the heavens.
And it's around this time that we see some of the earliest written explorations of
Yeah.
those big questions, like in the Epic of Gilgamesh.
Absolutely.
There is no permanence.
Yeah.
That's a line that's always stuck with me.
Such a poignant reflection on the human condition.
Yeah.
This realization that, everything is in flux, that even the greatest kings and heroes are subject to time.
Makes you really rethink what it means to seek meaning in a world where nothing lasts forever.
Yeah.
And speaking of seeking meaning in the face of mortality, ancient Egypt really took that to a whole other level.
Absolutely. Death and the afterlife were central to their worldview. They believed in the Ka and the Ba, these two aspects of the human soul.
Okay.
So imagine the Ka is this life force that animates you.
Okay.
Kind of like your spiritual battery.
Gotcha.
And then the Ba is your individual personality and spirit that continues on after death.
So death wasn't an end, it was just a transition.
Exactly. To another realm of existence.
And they had these elaborate mummification practices and tombs filled with...
Right, there are all this stuff.
About ensuring a safe passage for the bat into the afterlife.
It's like they created this incredibly detailed roadmap for navigating the world beyond death.
Yes.
With all the spells and rituals outlined in the Book of the Dead.
Yes.
I can't even imagine, the level of planning that went into that.
It's incredible.
It's pretty remarkable. Their beliefs were woven into every aspect of their lives.
Right.
From their art and architecture to their social hierarchies.
Yeah, it's a big contrast to those more individualistic expressions that we saw earlier.
It really is.
Yeah, it feels like a real pivotal shift from a focus on individual connection with nature to this more organized system that dictates, how you should live and what happens after you die.
And that shift continues as we move on to ancient Greece, where philosophy takes center stage.
Ah, the Greeks.
Yeah.
All right, so we've got Socrates, Plato, Aristotle.
Yeah, they really shook things up.
They really did.
They shifted the focus from mythological narratives and rituals to reason and logic as paths to understanding the world, including the spiritual realm.
Socrates with his relentless questioning, the unexamined life is not worth living.
Yeah.
He really pushed people to think critically about their beliefs.
He challenged the status quo, encouraged self-reflection, which is key to so many spiritual paths.
And then you've got Plato with his theory of forms.
Right. This idea that
Thus perfect realm.
There's this perfect eternal realm of truth.
Yeah.
Beyond our sensory experience.
And his allegory of the cave is such a powerful image.
I know.
We're all just prisoners mistaking shadows for reality. It really makes you question everything you think,
Plato was urging us to seek true knowledge. Beyond those appearances, beyond the confines of our limited senses.
And Aristotle, with his concept of eudaimonia.
Yeah.
This idea of flourishing or living a good life.
He believed that true happiness came from living virtuously, finding balance in all things, and fulfilling our potential as human beings.
So it's this really fascinating shift in ancient Greece where spirituality is no longer just about appeasing the gods or ensuring a good afterlife. It becomes all about ethics and logic and the pursuit of knowledge and self-discovery.
This is where the individual journey and the pursuit of knowledge really starts to take center stage. And it really lays the groundwork for how we approach spirituality and philosophy for centuries to come.
This has been an incredible journey already.
Yeah.
I'm really eager to see where it takes us next.
Me too. Yeah. So while the ancient Greeks were exploring spirituality through reason and philosophy in the East, you had this whole other rich tapestry of spiritual traditions flourishing.
Okay, so we're shifting gears a little bit geographically and philosophically.
Yeah.
I'm ready.
Right.
Let's talk about the East.
Let's dive into the wisdom of the East.
Let's start with Hinduism, one of the oldest religions in the world.
Okay.
It's a pretty complex system with tons of gods and goddesses.
It is incredibly diverse, with a history spanning thousands of years.
Yeah.
But at its core, you'll find these concepts of Brahman and Atman.
Okay.
So think of Brahman as this ultimate reality.
Okay.
The universal consciousness that pervades everything.
Right.
And then Atman is the individual soul, a spark of that divine essence within each of us.
So it's not so much about worshiping all these separate gods, but understanding that everything is interconnected as part of this larger cosmic reality.
It's about recognizing that underlying unity.
Gotcha. And is the ultimate goal to kind of realize the unity of Atman with Brahman?
That's the goal in many Hindu traditions, yeah.
Okay.
To achieve moksha, liberation from this cycle of birth and death.
To transcend the illusion of separateness.
Exactly.
And experience oneness with the divine.
Yeah.
That sounds like a really profound spiritual journey.
It is.
What are some of the paths that Hindus take to achieve this realization?
Well, there are many paths which reflects the diversity of Hindu beliefs and practices.
Okay.
Some focus on devotion to particular deities, others on meditation and yoga.
Yeah.
Still others on ethical living and selfless service.
So it's really about finding the path that works for you.
Exactly. It's not about adhering to some rigid dogma, but finding what resonates with your own individual nature.
Yeah.
And leads you towards self-discovery and spiritual growth.
It's fascinating how it embraces this idea of multiple paths leading to the same ultimate goal. It seems to allow for a lot of individual expression.
Yeah, it does.
Within this larger spiritual framework.
A lot of freedom within that structure.
Okay, now what about Buddhism?
Yeah.
It also seems to really emphasize this idea of personal experience.
It does. It arose in India around the 5th century BCE.
Okay.
And its founder, Siddhartha Gautama the Buddha, was a prince who renounced his worldly possessions.
I've heard that story.
Yeah.
It's always struck me as kind of a radical act.
It was a profound shift.
This prince leaving behind a life of privilege to confront these harsh realities.
Enlightenment and understand the root of human suffering.
So his teachings weren't really about worshiping gods or deities or anything like that?
No, he was more concerned with understanding the nature of suffering and finding a path to liberation from it.
And that's all outlined in the Four Noble Truths?
Yes, the Four Noble Truths identify the presence of suffering dukkha.
Right.
Its origin in attachment and craving, the possibility of its cessation, and the path to achieving that liberation.
Which is the Eightfold Path.
Exactly.
So Buddhism kind of acknowledges that suffering is part of life.
It's an inherent part of the human experience.
But it also offers a way out.
Yes, a way to transcend that suffering.
And that's where the practice of mindfulness comes in.
Right, cultivating this deep awareness of the present moment.
Okay.
Without judgment.
That makes me think of anicca and anatta.
Yes.
Impermanence and non-self.
Exactly. These are core Buddhist teachings.
Yeah.
Anicca reminds us that everything is in constant flux.
Right.
Nothing lasts forever.
Right.
Not even our sense of self.
Right.
And anatta challenges this notion of a permanent, unchanging soul.
Okay.
Suggesting that what we perceive as self is actually this collection of constantly changing physical and mental processes.
So it's a very different idea of the soul.
It is.
Than what we saw with the Egyptians.
Very different.
We're very focused on the afterlife.
Yes.
And this continuation of the self.
Right. Buddhism encourages us to let go of those attachments to these fixed ideas of self and permanence.
Okay.
To see the world as it truly is, this constant flow of change.
It's a big ask.
It is. But that understanding is key to liberating ourselves from suffering.
It's a very different way of looking at the world and our place in it.
For sure.
Now, what about Taoism?
Okay.
It seems to offer yet another different perspective.
Yeah, it's all about aligning oneself with the Tao.
Okay.
The natural order of the universe.
It's less about doctrines and beliefs.
Less about dogma, more about living in accordance with the flow of nature.
Okay, so instead of trying to control or impose our will on the world, Taoism encourages us to just go with the flow.
Exactly, to trust in the natural unfolding of things.
That sounds pretty nice, actually.
It does.
To cultivate wu wei.
Yes, effortless action or non-doing.
Which doesn't mean being passive.
It doesn't mean being passive.
But acting in a way that's in harmony with the Tao?
Exactly, like water flowing effortlessly around obstacles.
I love that metaphor.
It's beautiful.
Moving through life with grace and ease, just finding that natural path.
Yeah.
Now, alongside Taoism, you have Confucianism, which emerged around the same time in ancient China.
Yeah, they're often seen as these two complementary traditions.
Okay.
So while Taoism focuses on the individual's relationship with the cosmos, Confucianism is more concerned with creating a harmonious society.
So it's more about our relationships with each other.
Exactly.
And building a just society.
Less about mystical experiences, more about ethical conduct.
Okay.
Confucius emphasized these virtues like benevolence, righteousness, propriety, wisdom, trustworthiness.
Yeah.
He believed that by cultivating these virtues within ourselves and our relationships, we could create a more just and harmonious world.
It's a good reminder that spirituality isn't just about personal enlightenment.
No.
It's also about our responsibilities.
It's about our responsibilities to each other.
To each other and the world around us.
And speaking of responsibility and ethical conduct, our journey takes us next to the rise of the monotheistic religions.
Right.
Judaism, Christianity, and Islam.
Okay, so we're moving into the realm of one God.
Yeah.
I'm ready to see how these religions shape the landscape of spiritual seeking.
Okay. Yeah, it really is amazing how that concept of one God spread and influenced so much of the world.
Yeah, and each one has its own story to tell.
Oh, absolutely.
Where do we even begin?
Well, Judaism is considered the oldest of the three.
Okay.
Tracing its roots back to Abraham and the covenant he made with God.
Right, that covenant's a key part of their identity.
It is this idea of a special relationship with God, this promise of protection and guidance in exchange for following God's laws.
And all those laws and stories and prophecies.
Right, all recorded in the Torah.
The Torah.
The foundational text of Judaism.
It's amazing how these ancient texts still speak to people today.
Yeah, they offer guidance and meaning in a world that's constantly changing.
And you also have the prophetic tradition within Judaism.
Yes.
With people like Isaiah and Jeremiah challenging those in power.
Yeah, calling for social justice, a return to God's ways.
That quote from Isaiah, "Learn to do good, seek justice, correct oppression."
Powerful words.
It's so powerful.
Still relevant.
It really is. It's this reminder that spirituality isn't just personal.
It's about action.
Yeah, it's about acting in the world,
right.
Fighting for what's right.
And that call to action, to live a life of compassion and justice, that's at the heart of Christianity too, which emerged from Judaism with Jesus Christ as its central figure.
His teachings really did turn things upside down.
They did love your enemies, turn the other cheek.
Yeah.
These are radical ideas at the time.
Not exactly mainstream.
No, he challenged the social and religious norms of his day, preaching a message of love, forgiveness, compassion.
And it's his death and resurrection that become like the cornerstone of the Christian faith.
Offering the promise of salvation and eternal life.
It's interesting how this idea of a personal savior, someone who sacrifices himself for humanity, resonated so deeply with people.
It really did.
And became such a driving force in shaping Western civilization.
And then in the 7th century CE, we have the rise of Islam. With the Prophet Muhammad receiving revelations from God, which are recorded in the Quran, the holy book of Islam.
And Islam really emphasizes this idea of submission to the will of Allah.
Yeah, living in accordance with God's divine commandments.
Which are manifested in the 5 pillars of Islam.
Yes, faith, prayer, charity, fasting, and pilgrimage.
They form the foundation of Islamic practice.
They do, shaping daily life, fostering a sense of community and devotion.
It's interesting how those pillars create this structure.
Yeah, a framework.
For spiritual practice.
Yeah.
And then within Islam, you also have Sufism.
Yes, often described as the mystical heart of Islam. Emphasizing a more direct and personal experience of the divine.
So through things like meditation and chanting.
Yeah, practices like that.
Rumi, the 13th century Sufi poet.
Beautiful example.
Yeah, his poems are so full of this longing for union.
Yeah, with the beloved.
With the divine.
That metaphor for the divine.
It's this thread of mysticism that weaves its way through so many different traditions.
Right.
This desire for a direct experience of the divine.
It transcends those boundaries of organized religion.
And then as we move into the Enlightenment, we see this really big shift in how people are approaching spirituality and religion.
Reason and empirical evidence take center stage.
Right. It was a time of radical questioning and upheaval.
It was thinkers like Voltaire and Immanuel Kant pushing back against dogma and blind faith.
Yeah, advocating for a more rational approach
to
understanding the world,
including
spirituality.
Kant, in particular, he argued for a moral framework based on reason, not just religious dictates.
So morality becomes less about following rules and more about using your own reason.
Exactly, using your own conscience.
To determine what's right and wrong.
Yeah. A major shift in thinking.
And of course you have the counter movement to that.
Of course, romanticism.
Romanticism.
Celebrating emotion, tuition, and the power of nature.
It's like this pendulum swing back towards the heart.
Yeah, back to the subjective experience.
And the romantic poets like William Wordsworth. Finding that sense of the divine in nature.
They saw nature as a source of wonder and inspiration.
It's interesting how this tension between reason and emotion, this tension between objectivity and subjectivity. It's a tension that we're still grappling with today.
We are. It's ongoing.
Yeah.
And as we move into the 19th and 20th centuries, psychology emerges as this new lens through which to explore spiritual experience. William James publishes The Varieties of Religious Experience in 1902.
It was groundbreaking. He really took those subjective experiences seriously.
He did. He studied them with rigor.
Yeah.
like any other psychological phenomenon.
Arguing that these religious experiences, even the mystical ones,
even the supernatural,
were real and valuable.
They were a vital part of the human psyche.
Yeah.
A window into the depths of consciousness.
And around the same time, you have the transcendentalist movement in America.
Yes, with figures like Emerson and Thoreau.
Emerson with his self-reliance and Thoreau at Walden Pond.
Seeking spiritual renewal in nature.
It's like a very American brand of spirituality.
It is this emphasis on individual freedom and self-discovery.
And it feels connected to what we're seeing today.
Yeah, absolutely.
With the New Age movement.
The New Age movement drawing from all these different traditions.
It's so eclectic.
It is.
Yoga, meditation, crystals, energy healing.
It's about finding what works for you on your personal journey.
Yeah. And alongside that, you have this growing number of people who identify as spiritual but not religious.
Right, the SBNR folks.
What do you think is driving that trend?
Well, I think a lot of people are disillusioned with organized religion.
Yeah.
They may have been hurt by rigid belief systems, or they feel like those systems don't speak to their experience anymore.
But they haven't lost that yearning for meaning and connection.
Exactly. They're creating their own personalized spiritual paths.
Yeah.
Drawing from various sources and practices.
It's about what feels authentic to them.
Right.
Not about conforming to a predefined set of beliefs.
And the internet has made it easier than ever to connect and explore.
It really has.
It's an exciting time to be on a spiritual journey.
It is. There are so many possibilities.
So many paths.
When we look back over all of this history, what does it tell us about spiritual seeking?
I think it reveals that this human search for meaning and connection, it's as old as humanity itself.
Yeah.
It's a fundamental part of who we are.
It really is.
And while the forms that it takes may change, that underlying impulse remains.
We're all searching for something.
We are.
This has been an incredible journey.
It has.
From cave paintings to ancient texts,
right.
Organized religions, personal quests for enlightenment.
And it continues to unfold today in ways that are both ancient and modern.
That's so true.
Individual and collective.
As you continue your own exploration, remember, there's no one right way to be spiritual.
That's right. The path that resonates with you. That speaks to your heart and mind. That's the right path for you.
What a journey.
It has been.
From the dawn of humanity to the digital age. We see this enduring human need to connect with something bigger.
Yes, to find meaning and purpose in the face of life's mysteries.
And it's inspiring to see how it continues to evolve.
It really is.
As we wrap up, I want to leave you with one question.
Okay.
If spirituality is about connecting with something greater than yourself, what does that something greater look like for you?
How do you experience that in your life?
Keep seeking, keep exploring, and trust your own inner compass as you navigate all these amazing spiritual possibilities.
Beautiful.
And to all of you listening, thank you for joining us.
Yes, thank you.
On this exploration of the history of spiritual seeking.
It's been a pleasure.
May your own journey be filled with wonder and insight.
And connection.
And a deepening connection to the mystery and beauty of existence.
Absolutely.